5 pros and cons to raising 100% grass-fed cattle. Hey guys, welcome back to Dexter Ranch. I've got a great video lined up for you today if you're wanting to have a better understanding of the pros and cons to raising grass-fed cattle on a small farm. Be sure to stay to the end, as my perspective could help you to make a decision how you want to raise cattle on your farm, and that decision may not be easily reversible down the road. A lot of people that have never raised cattle, and even some people that raise cattle but have never raised them grass-fed, believe that the only reason that a person would raise cattle in this way is to be able to market grass-fed beef. But in my opinion and in my experience, that just simply is not the case. And that's why I felt it was important to make today's video and lay out some of the pros and cons to raising grass-fed cattle on a small farm. And the reason that I say on a small farm is because my list of pros and cons being on a small acreage farm could be completely different than somebody that is raising grass-fed cattle on a large acreage farm. With that being said, let's get into my list of pros and cons. I'm going to go backwards, starting with the cons, and then we'll move on to the pros. The first con on my list is that a potential customer may unfairly judge the body condition of your grass-fed cattle when being compared to cattle that are receiving grain in their diet. Grass-fed cattle will finish with a carcass weight that is 10 to 15% less than grain-fed cattle. And for this reason, the possibility exists that a customer may pass on your farm, whether they're looking for live animals or beef, simply because there's an alternative farm where the cattle's body condition is more aligned with the standard, or what they most often see, which is grain-fed cattle. You see, currently in the United States, 75% of grass-fed beef is imported from places like Australia, New Zealand, and many parts of South America. And only 4% of all the beef sold in the United States is currently grass-fed beef. So through those statistics, you can see just how much of a niche market grass-fed beef still is in the United States. Therefore, most people still don't have a good understanding that naturally grass-fed animals are going to be a little leaner. And for that reason, they may judge your animals based on their slightly slimmer figure. The second con on the list is that you are at the mercy of your hay supplier. In a grass-fed operation, your options on feed are obviously limited to grass. So whether it's a bad year for hay production, or if your hay supplier sold all of his hay to someone else without giving you the option to prepay, whatever the case is, you are dependent on that hay being available. And you are stuck paying whatever that guy's price is, regardless, for that year. On my farm, the relationship with the hay guy is a pretty serious one. I always pay him immediately. I don't go and buy hay from someone else as long as he's treating me right, as me going and buying from someone else would open the door for him selling to someone else. Nonetheless, I am at the mercy of him or someone, compared to a grain-fed operation where I would have options on what I could feed my cattle during the winter months. Number 3 is, depending on where you live, it may not be as easy as you think to sell your grass-fed beef. We all grew up eating grain-fed beef. And for this reason, there's a lot of people that are stuck in their ways and only like what they know. I don't think this is going to be a big problem for most people, but in rural areas, it may be harder to find people that are searching for grass-fed beef. So just do your research and find out what the people in your area are looking for. Number 4 on the con list is that it's not as easy to find cattle when you're looking to grow your herd. Because of the things that I've already pointed out in this video, you're far less likely to run across cattle for sale that are coming from a 100% grass-fed farm. And transitioning a full-grown cow from grain to only grass is not a quick or easy task. Their body condition is going to suffer for the first couple of winters until they learn to maintain themselves on only hay and mineral. I have found several animals that I was interested in buying, and I ended up passing on them simply because I know how difficult this task is. Be sure to ask detailed questions when looking to buy new cattle, and make sure exactly what they are being fed, as just a little bit of grain in their diet can make this transition difficult. And the 5th and final con on my list is probably the most obvious one, and that is that it takes considerably longer to finish grass-fed cattle. A grain-fed steer will be ready to go to slaughter between 15 and 18 months of age, where a grass-fed steer won't be ready to go to slaughter until 24 to 30 months of age. So it's a considerably longer time investment per animal on your farm. And now on to the pros, and I've ordered these from least important to most important to me. The first one would be that yes, if all works out as planned, you will be able to sell your beef for a premium. And on top of that, it has all kinds of health benefits over grain-fed beef to your own family. Number 2 on the pro list is a little bit specific to my situation. I live in Kansas, but I work for a company in California. So from time to time, I have to travel for my job. And the fact that I raise grass-fed cattle puts me in a situation where I can put a bale of hay out, and that will last the cattle for 5 to 6 days. Now this allows me to be away from the farm for a day or two if needed. Where if I was feeding grain, then I would have to take the cows that grain once, possibly twice a day, every day, and it would be very difficult to be away for any period of time. The third pro on the list, and we're starting to get into the actual reasons why I raise my cattle this way, is that I believe this is the way these cattle were created to live. As I've said, most of my cattle came from farms that were feeding them grain. And it's been a long road to transition them back to only grass. That being said, I witnessed them year after year thriving more and more on only grass. And it feels good pointing them back to living in a way that more closely resembles the original design. Number 4 is, I believe that it creates a more resilient and more self-sufficient animal that is less likely to need vaccines and other human inputs. This means that you can spend less time poking and messing with your animals and more time enjoying and understanding them. And the 5th, final, and most important pro to me is that it makes for a more peaceful and calmer farm. I've seen both ways, and when your animals are conditioned to depend on you for their food every single day, they become more needy and more demanding. The farm becomes loud and has a totally different energy to it. Every time you walk out the door, the cattle are lined across the fence, waiting on you to bring them something. For me, it made me not enjoy the cattle. In my current situation, as long as the hay feeder has hay in it, they're content and carrying on with their lives. They don't see me as their food supplier. If I want to walk out there and interact with them, then I can, and everybody's just doing their own thing. It's not a negative energy, and it's much more peaceful and enjoyable for me. And that concludes our list of pros and cons. Hopefully this list of pros and cons has given you something to think about and inspired your thinking in either one way or the other. If it has, or if it was enjoyable to you, make sure you hit the like button. And if you haven't yet, then consider subscribing to Dexter Ranch. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!